Hi, I'm Drew D'Amelia, and today's movie is Very Many Movies. I've been gone for a while, so you can consider this my way of catching up. You also might have noticed that I look a little bit different, and that's very judgmental of you because I'm sorry that some people have to deal with random clusters of acne forming around their right eye right when they're supposed to film a giant video, and I think that you need to take... These movies are going to be spoken about in no particular order. It's totally random. However, at the very end, I will tell you what my 10 favorite and 10 least favorite movies were. Also, these are 100 movies that were released in 2017, not necessarily made in 2017. Also, these are not the only 100 movies that came out in 2017. These just happen to be the ones that I saw. So, if one of your favorite 2017 movies was left out, I don't care. Anyway, let's get going. Despicable Me 3. I liked the cartoonish gadgets and weapons. It was fun to see what they did. And I like the Minions. People don't seem to like the Minions, but I don't see what's so bad about them in the movies. It's not like they're doing Minion memes in the movies. And I also liked how Steve Carell voiced two totally different characters with totally distinct voices. That was just really interesting to listen to from a voice acting perspective. And it was cool to see Trey Parker dip his feet into something that wasn't a Trey Parker project, although I'm not sure how Trey Parker feels about having done it. Every other character, though, like all of Gru's family, I didn't care about any of them or what they did. And the Minions could have killed them. That would have been gruesome, but people might have liked the Minions a bit more. Gilbert. It was a documentary about the comedian Gilbert Gottfried, and it was interesting to see his real, very different personality on display. Dunkirk. I thought this movie was really boring the first time I saw it, but I watched it again, and it did get better. It's not a movie that's focused on characters, which doesn't surprise me with Christopher Nolan, and it's not focused on history either, which does surprise me because it seems like it's historic, but there's actually not a whole lot of historic context in it. You don't really exactly know what Dunkirk is or what its historic significance is. However, it is focused on survival, and while I don't think this was the best movie to be a vehicle for that, it worked. Death Note. The original anime was great, and if they're gonna make a movie based on the original anime, it's not gonna be the worst thing in the world that they extract some of those ideas from the anime. You have some similar character dynamics, you have some twists that reminded me of the original anime, but it's obviously vastly inferior compared to the original anime in just about every way. The only thing I can think of that I liked maybe a little bit more than the original anime was Willem Dafoe. I mean, I probably didn't like it more than the original anime, but it was just a nice casting choice. Good job, Willem Dafoe. Paddington 2. It was refreshing to see a movie that just had manners. It was a really pleasant movie to watch. I preferred the first movie because I think it had a bit more hijinks with Paddington. I think the sequel spent a bit too much time in jail than I would have liked, but still, it just felt nice to be in the company of such a polite movie. The Emoji Movie. I didn't hate this movie for the reasons everyone else seemed to hate it. I didn't care that it had product placement, I didn't mind that it was about emojis, and I didn't think it was a ripoff of Inside Out or Wreck-It Ralph. And I thought that the bad guy being the smiley face was an interesting idea. You gotta at least admit that. You also gotta admit that it was a really bad movie. It wasn't good. It had a lot of sloppy writing. And I wanted to at least say that it had a creative premise I hadn't seen before, exploring the world of apps within our phones. There have to be a bunch of imaginative possibilities there. But the more I thought about it, I realized that apps are boring. It's not the apps that are interesting, it's the people that use the apps that are interesting. And we have movies for those people. It's all the other movies. And you could say, well, the games are interesting, the game apps. And yeah, we have movies for those too, like the Angry Birds movie, and the Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature. If you're looking for an animated movie to hate, pick this one. I usually tend to have an unfair bias toward movies if they're animated because I like animation, but that didn't help this movie out. It's the same business tycoon trying to get real estate plot that you've seen a million times before. Bad jokes, bad puns, bad movie. This movie has a lot in common with my shit. It's nutty by nature. And also it's shit. Darkest Hour. I liked the second half better. I think there was more going on that was interesting. Gary Oldman was incredible. I really found it fascinating the way he got lost in his role, and I do think he had an advantage of wearing the fat suit because it made me go, wow, this is nothing like Gary Oldman. He's really lost in this role, and he was also lost in fat roles. But you know what? Whatever. It was cool. And I think it's also interesting that Dunkirk and this movie came out the same year and are both nominated for Best Picture when they're both about the same thing. They even ended with the exact same speech from Winston Churchill. The Dunkirk is more about the soldier side, and Darkest Hour is more about the politician side. And while it did help to have seen Dunkirk first, because I could watch Darkest Hour and go, oh wow, I get what's going on. I kind of wish I watched Darkest Hour first and then watched Dunkirk, because Darkest Hour actually explains history. Tonya. I liked the attitude and perspective of this movie. It just kept things light and fresh. It did make the crime that was committed seem mostly innocuous, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but it was fun. I also hear that this movie was very inaccurate about its portrayal of everything, so that's kind of a movie ruiner, but it was fun. Columbus. I really didn't think the two leads would wind up having chemistry, but they did. And also this movie, in terms of composition, has just wonderful imagery. The Lego Ninjago movie. Is Ninjago something that existed before this movie? I don't actually know. I do know that I liked the sense of humor in this movie, and I liked the world. Obviously, with Legos, you're going to be able to have some creative sequences, and they took advantage of that. And I really liked whoever voiced Gargamel. I thought that was some solid voice acting. But, I mean, this is not even close to the Lego movie. The Bye-Bye Man. This movie was a ton of fun. There were so many awful, confusing, broken moments that were great for a laugh. In the theater I was watching this in, basically everyone just decided it was a comedy by the end of it. It's not the best comedy of all time, but it's definitely one of the best comedies of the year. Fun Mom Dinner. I'm pretty sure I hated this movie, but for some reason I feel compelled to think of it from the perspective of other people. So, it's a casual, light adventure. I imagine if you're particularly lonely, you might like to watch these moms have a small amount of fun and a small amount of dinner. John Wick Chapter 2. The action was just as awesome as it was in the first movie. The story, a little less awesome. I really liked the simplicity of the first movie's story, and the second movie complicated things a bit too much for me, but they did set up a lot of cool stuff that's allegedly going to happen in Chapter 3, so that third movie better knock my balls off. It's supposed to mean that the third movie better be good, but it sounds awful, actually. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Marvel movies can fall into a bit of a routine, so it was really refreshing to see this movie take its characters in such bold, different directions. And everything about this is so unique, and that uniqueness really grips you to everything that much more. I thought the jokes were very memorable. I think it was an amazing finale in this movie. I like this one even better than the first. Beauty and the Beast. The 1991 animated Disney movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. So when I learned they were remaking it as a live-action movie, I thought, why? And every decision this movie made that did something differently from the animated movie, I thought was definitely worse. I thought some of the decisions were much worse. Some people said some of the decisions fixed things that were in the animated movie, and I thought those decisions were also worse. I hated this movie, but I hated it so much that it was almost fulfilling in a questionably relaxing way. I will have to give this movie a proper takedown in the future in some other video. Call Me By Your Name. I thought this was going to be a movie where the fact the characters were gay didn't matter because everyone was chill with it. It was mostly that kind of movie, but not entirely. It was a movie where the tension was supposed to be entirely driven by the feelings and emotions of the characters, which is fine, admirable even, but it did feel like there could have been a little more tension. I'm not saying you had to draw it from sending them to gay camp, I don't want that, but there could have been more feelings, maybe. All that said, it was still compelling to watch. Ingrid Goes West. This was such a satisfying commentary on the culture of people being obsessive over celebrities on social media. Aubrey Plaza was at her absolute best in this role. I wish her character did herself in more, where toward the end of the movie it was a bad guy that wound up doing her in mostly, but she did herself in a lot, and I was just very happy to see a movie made about a character like this. Good job! Rough Night. I think the most interesting part of this movie was the stereotypical gender dynamic being swapped, but they didn't push that very far. The movie was also supposed to have a dark angle, but that wasn't pushed very far. It had fun characters with an interesting dynamic, but it wasn't really anything truly funny. Detroit. This was based on a true story I had never heard of from 50 years ago. The movie started off slow, but when it got to the meat of things, it got tense real fast. And I can't confirm this, but I just have a feeling that this movie was a good, accurate portrayal of racism back then. You had some cops that were racist, and you had some that were okay with black people. Right? Phantom Thread. It was fascinating to explore a world of people with giant sticks up their asses. It made the movie very funny and weirdly relaxing because of their polite behavior. It took a bizarre turn, but by the time it got there, everything that had happened in the movie felt like it was building up to that moment. It was simple, effective, and brilliant storytelling, and the acting from both leads was phenomenal. Bigger, Fatter Liar. You might have heard of the first movie, Big Fat Liar. The sequel, Bigger, Fatter Liar, is a lie in and of itself, because this movie's worse in every conceivable way. I feel like the first movie made it fun to be a kid, and the second movie made it painful to be alive. Girls Trip. This was a good cast of characters, despite one character almost reaching a level of annoying where I could not tolerate her anymore. They also made the movie funnier by delivering the jokes with complete sincerity. The plot was technically bland, but the way they did it raised some interesting, surprisingly provocative questions that kept you hooked. Chips! Or... I don't know. Everyone remembers Chips, right? I don't. I laughed more than I thought I would in this movie. I think 5 times. And I'm gonna admit it, I liked the chemistry of the two leads in this movie. I did. There's nothing else worth mentioning, though. My Little Pony, the movie. I didn't have any prior experience with the show this movie is based on, so I went into the movie cold. And I kinda loved it. It was a classic, traditionally animated, musical fantasy adventure movie. How often do we get movies like that anymore? Even Disney doesn't make that many movies like that anymore. And the music in this movie was some of the best musical movie music I've heard in a really long time. I liked it better than Frozen's music and Moana's music. I'm sorry if this information is scaring you away. I thought the characters were great and dynamic and had wonderful interactions with each other. Nothing about the movie really pushed it to being exceptional, but as entertainment, I felt it was extremely solid, and I am aware of what this implies, and I'm just going to have to live with those implications. Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. This movie took a lot of liberties with the books, which I didn't notice because it's been a really long time since I read the books. But when I kind of looked into the books again, it did start to bother me a bit. This movie was zany in its own right, but there was nothing too special about it. I think having adults voice the kids worked a lot better than I thought it would. And, you know, it was a nice change in animation style for DreamWorks, so good on them for that. Fist Fight! This is a dumb plot about two teachers that are gonna fight after school, so you better catch it. Everything leading up to the fight, The fight itself, it had an impressive amount of extras, so that kinda actually got me a little bit hyped. I couldn't believe how many people were there. But as a fight, while it was satisfying seeing Ice Cube and Charlie Day get it on, it's one of those things you didn't know you wanted to see, it definitely wasn't a fair fight. Charlie Day was using all kinds of makeshift weapons. I mean, if Ice Cube had those abilities, Charlie Day wouldn't have survived that. Oh, also, I think I laughed like 8 times, so that's good, I guess. Gerald's Game. It was a simple story, and it was super suspenseful for me to try to get through. I liked it though, and I liked the ending, although I do wonder if the movie might have been better without the ending. It would be nice to see a Stephen King story that was, cleanly written all the way through. Also, am I the only one that hears the title Gerald's Game and thinks of that Pixar short Jerry's Game? I can't be the only one to be thinking this. Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie. It was great to see a great show return and finally get a conclusion that it definitely deserved. It was unfortunate because this was intended to be an ending for the series, so they kicked things up a notch and made it different from a typical Hey Arnold episode, but because it was framed as the return of Hey Arnold, we were kind of looking for a typical Hey Arnold episode. So, in that sense, it was a little bit jarring, but regardless, it was entertaining and it was really good to be reminded of a great show. So, farewell, Arnold! ! The Boss Baby. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was just impressed that we had gotten to a point where such a weird concept for a movie could exist. And you know what? I genuinely really liked the movie. I thought it was hilarious, I thought it was colorful, I thought it was zany, which are all great things. I thought that the relationship between the two leads was really compelling. I thought Alec Baldwin did an amazing job voice acting, and I thought the kid did a really great job too. I think it's the best cartoony movie I've seen in a long time. It pays tribute to the classic cartoons and their styles so well. And listen, I get it. This movie's being trolled a whole lot because it got an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature. I trolled the movie myself. I went to see the movie wearing a suit, okay? So I get it. But if you're gonna troll it, be smart about it and actually watch it, okay? Then have an opinion on it. Honestly, I'm serious here. The Boss Baby is probably my favorite animated movie of the year. Goo goo gaga. Woody Woodpecker. Yeah, did you know they made this movie? Everyone was asking for it. It's on Netflix, but I think it's gonna be released in America still? Anyway, it was better than I thought it would be. Woody Woodpecker was nice and wacky, which is how it seemed he should have been, although I honestly don't have that much familiarity with this character. I will say, though, he seemed like the kind of character where he was basically a god just fucking with everyone that got in his way. And there were moments of that in this movie, but not enough for me. I wish they pushed that element more. Instead, we had a lot of focus on human characters, and I'm thinking, no, I just want to see the God Almighty Woody Woodpecker make heathens die. Also, this is a big mistake on whoever edited this movie, but after the end credits, they decided to show this random classic Woody Woodpecker short. Either it was classic, or they made it to seem like it was classic, but either way, the 5-minute cartoon short was much better than the live-action movie that we got. Honestly, if I hadn't seen that short, I might have liked the live-action movie better, but seeing all the setup and payoff and good writing in this little animated short, I went, oh yeah, that's why the movie wasn't that good. Whoops. Home Again. This movie had one conflict, and it was not significant, and it was resolved immediately. And it also had unappealing characters. So I don't know how I'm supposed to watch this movie and go, this isn't boring. Undercover Grandpa. James Caan is back at it again. Listen, I like movies where you have a bunch of badasses assemble and they each have unique skills that they bring to the group. I'm kind of a sucker for that. But this movie made that seem as unappealing as possible with some truly lame old fucks. The fact it was a kid movie made the action lame, and the fact that you could tell these old people were not actually capable of doing anything made the action lame, and the laziness made the rest of it lame. The Star. From the makers of the Emoji Movie, a Bible movie. I mean, for me, Bible movies aren't something that I see very often, so that angle actually made it feel a little fresher. Otherwise, it is a standard movie, but I liked it more than I thought I would. And I hate admitting it, but of all the movies I watched in 2017, this one put me in the Christmas spirit the most. Like, I was really trying to get into the Christmas spirit and having a hard time doing it. And then The Star came along and made me think about the beauty of miracles, and I'm so ashamed. Good time. This movie had great colors and great editing. It was a simple bank robbery movie that had really good momentum. It was a good time. I'm a hack! Unlocked. This was a standard action movie with violence and twists, and the lead woman, you really believed she was a hard ass. Justice League. The villain sucked! The final battle was alright, but everyone's powers felt mostly underutilized, and Superman coming along just kind of made everyone feel even more useless. It was a dumb movie, but there were fun moments, I guess. The Greatest Showman. This was historically very irresponsible, and had an immensely stupid plot. But so do a lot of great classic musicals. I can handle stupid. The problem is, in those classic musicals, there's usually this element of true greatness that allows you to forgive the stupidity. This movie did not come with that, so I don't quite forgive the stupidity. But, and I don't like admitting it, some of those dumb fucking pop songs I find really catchy. The Jetsons and WWE. Robo-WrestleMania. I guess it's time you found out that the WWE has been teaming up with some classic Hanna-Barbera characters, and there have been 4 movies like this now. This was the first time that we saw the Jetsons in 27 years. And I guess if you were gonna have a movie about the Jetsons meeting the WWE, it's the best movie you're gonna get. But I just wish the return of the Jetsons focused more on the Jetsons. Snatched. It sucked. There were barely any funny moments, there was barely any action. It's hard for me to decipher what the point of all of it was. Also, the title, Snatched. I get that it's a play on of they got kidnapped and also a snatch's vagina. Is that it? The Mummy. I kinda liked this movie. The Egyptian lore was new to me and I didn't see the ending coming. My friends told me that I really need to see the originals though, because I'm probably gonna like those a lot more. I also thought the inclusion of Dr. Jekyll was a little odd. And listen, I get that they're going for a dark universe thing and they want to have Dr. Jekyll in there, but I also hear they might have canceled the dark universe. So just imagine looking back at this movie decades later and people going, oh, the Mummy. Wait, is there just a scene with Dr. Jekyll? Oh, he's gone. Does he come back? No? Okay. Mommie, Dead, and Dearest. I thought this was a good documentary about a morally ambiguous case. And you know what? I feel the justice system prevailed in making a fair ruling in this movie. Good job, justice system. Good job, justice system. Please help, I can't stop. Okja. I feel like this is a very common story, but somehow in this movie it felt like I'd never really seen it before. It's an emotional story about a girl and her pet as the girl tries to save the pet from its fate of becoming meat. And somehow this movie had an amazing sense of humor. It always held your attention because you kept caring about the bond between those two characters. Suburbicon. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. The way they chose to gradually unfold the story made it a lot of fun for me to watch, and I liked the imagery. Surf's Up 2, WaveMania. Let me break this down for you. You might not be familiar with the original movie, Surf's Up. That was a weird movie on its own, because it was an animated, documentary-style movie about a penguin that was surfing. Odd, right? But then there's the sequel, which comes, I think 10 years later, in which they join the WWE. And the WWE is known for joining Hanna-Barbera characters in their animated adventures, but now they're tagging along in this sequel to Surf's Up. Honestly, all of this makes this animated franchise of Surf's Up the weirdest animated franchise I've ever seen. Weirder than Ice Age. I really think that I'm standing by that. The movie was not a good movie, but I just couldn't look away. I was too fascinated by the fact that it existed. Bright. This was an awful, horribly confused allegory for racism. It's the kind of movie where a lot of things need to be explained, but the movie doesn't feel like explaining any of it. There's also basically no consequences or setup or anything that would make the movie, good. It Comes at Night. It was a good movie about paranoia. I feel like there might be a better movie about paranoia out there. Downsizing. I thought this was going to be the collateral beauty of this year. When I saw the trailer, I thought this looks incredibly stupid, and I thought it was going to be a great bad movie. I was actually sold for the first 20 minutes. I thought that they made the premise really interesting by really exploring it to the point of raising a lot of actually interesting philosophical questions. And then the second act rolls around, and the movie basically completely abandons its premise and decides instead, let's tell a story about how it sucks to be poor. And I really don't understand what people going from normal size to tiny has to do with how much poverty sucks. Why can't you just tell that story with regular-sized people? You might be thinking, oh, well, did it imply that because they were tiny it made them poor? No, because they were really rich tiny people. I don't know why it didn't just stick with the premise. Mom and Dad. This was a movie about how a bunch of parents suddenly want to kill their kids, and I wish the movie pushed that further. It did have an emotional core, which was fascinating given the premise, and I appreciated it, but there just wasn't enough horrific violence for my tastes. It did give us a nice addition to the Nicolas Cage wacky scene pantheon, as Nicolas Cage is screaming the hokey pokey while he aggressively takes an axe to his homemade pool table. There you go. The Shape of Water. I was so happy to see such a weird idea for a movie done so genuinely that it felt normal. There was something to grip you in this movie the entire way through. And I'm very grateful for Sally Hawkins' body performance. Her performance. I loved it. Her body. The movie. Baywatch. I don't know much about the original show, but if the original show featured pathetic and embarrassing attempts to try and fail to be raunchy, then I would call this a successful reboot. The character arcs in this movie were utterly pointless. I guess that there was more man-meat shown in this movie than I imagine was in the original show. I suppose that's better. And the award for saddest cameo in a 2017 movie goes to Baywatch for the scene where David Hasselhoff visits Dwayne Johnson in a Sprint store. The Wizard of Lies. This is a movie about Bernie Madoff. I think that was his name. And it was cool seeing a movie about a guy that did bad things that didn't really seem to care that he did bad things. A Dog's Purpose. Awful. This is a movie about a dog, and every time it dies, it has a new life, and it keeps going, and you'd think, alright, that's something to go off of. But the movie chooses to spend a huge bulk of its time focusing on just one life, which involves a boring family drama. And then eventually, the dog gets to another life that deals with the exact same family and their boring drama. And there are only 2 lives in the middle. And given how little screen time they have, they just feel irrelevant. And one of them feels especially jarring because it's about a police dog that gets shot to death. And then it never comes back. I don't know. Also, can I just point out the people that wanted to boycott this movie because they saw clearly edited footage of dog abuse that turned out to not be dog abuse after the investigations were finished? You gonna take that back? I mean, I'm fine with you boycotting this movie either way. Thelma. This had a compelling idea of repression manifesting itself in strange, horrifying ways. The movie kind of felt unfinished, but it was still satisfying to watch. November 8th, 2016. You might have gathered that this is a movie about the day before the president was elected. Which president? You figure it out. I liked the movie because it showed both sides. People that wanted one candidate and people that wanted the other candidate. And it was very intriguing to see those perspectives and the way that the reactions changed as the night went on. However, given what today is like, I can't help but feel that the movie might have benefited from showing some days beyond the 8th of November. The Breadwinner. I saw the last movie made by these guys, and it was breathtaking. This movie was okay. It had a bold setting being set in the Middle East, but it wasn't as tense or heartbreaking as you would expect it to be. Kong, Skull Island. I didn't care about the humans in this. I wanted to see Kong, and I wanted to see Kong beat up a bunch of monsters, and Kong beat up one monster, and that was okay, I guess. What was not okay is there was a wacky comic relief character. And at the end of the movie, when the credits are already rolling, they decide to give this character this sincere, emotional scene that's supposed to bring closure to his character. Nobody asked for that! Show me Kong fighting monsters! 50 Shades Darker. This movie was an amazing study in pointlessness. There were 3 conflicts, and they were resolved within a few minutes. And that was it. There was porn, but it was inferior to regular porn. It's just beautiful how few consequences there were. It was hypnotic, even. The Post. This feels like a great movie that was made with the least amount of effort possible. Also, Bob and David, they should have talked with each other more, but that's just me. The Lego Batman movie. I liked how much fun this movie had. It went way further with everything than you thought would be allowed, and it didn't care, it just pushed it up to that level. And I guess it was good to see Batman's more dynamic, emotional side portrayed, but it didn't really make me care much about Batman or any of the characters, and I didn't really laugh much. It was a lot of fun, though. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I loved all the new story beats and lore that were added to this movie, and apparently some people hate the movie for that. I don't know why you'd hate it for creativity. I know some parts might have been a little dumb, but doesn't every Star Wars movie have things that are a little dumb in it? I don't know, I thought this was very entertaining. Wish Upon. I was way too drunk the first time I watched this, so I had to watch it again sober. It's a pretty funny movie and how stupid it is. Not a masterclass in disastrously funny movies, but definitely worth watching while you're sober. Get Out. I'm thrilled that what so many people have been feeling has been tackled so directly, and with a really creative fictional premise. I'm really happy for Peele, because now the Peele part of Key and Peele is starting to pick up as much steam as the Key part is. And I'm happy for sketch comedy for the same reasons, because, look, this movie came out of sketch comedy, which, honestly, it's fascinating how well it balances comedy and horror. And the screenplay, I think it's the best writing I've seen all year. I love this movie. Would recommend. Don't get out of the theater. No, where are you going? Don't get out. No, come on, it's okay that you're white. Ferdinand. Not great, but solid. I was miraculously not annoyed by Kate McKinnon in this movie, and John Cena was actually excellent. And it had a really solid ending that was told without words. Listen, I trolled the shit out of this movie. And you know what? Sometimes a movie is not that bad. Hashtag reality high. Another movie about people trying to fit in. Did this happen? Did I watch this? Loving Vincent. You might know that I like animation. And you might know that this movie is the first animated movie done entirely with oil paintings. I don't care. There are a ton of animated movies that are done entirely with drawings that are colored in. Why should I care if it's done with oil paint? Yeah, oil paint is a way to color drawings. Is it supposed to be better because it's done in oil paint? Because honestly, it looks worse. You can tell frame by frame that the paint strokes are different. And sometimes they cheat this by splitting the frame in half, and then half the frame, all the paint strokes move because characters are moving on that half, and the other half, the paint strokes don't move at all, and it looks terrible. I mean, I guess it's special, but why did we need it? Maybe a short film would have been okay, but after about 2 minutes, I didn't care that it was done with oil paints. I mean, maybe if the characters had an interesting design to them and there was some interesting animation going on, I might care a little bit more. But they rotoscoped the entire thing! And why did they rotoscope it? It was the only way that they could get the movie like this done. Well, then maybe we didn't need a movie like this. And you'd think with all that effort, you might have tried making the story not be incredibly boring. So sorry, Vincent, I don't love you. 9/11. The movie. This is probably the most compelling way to tell the trapped in an elevator story. It was also the most boring way to tell the most compelling version of the trapped in an elevator story. And no part of the movie topped this part, where in the very beginning, one character said, it was a 9th hour change, and another one said, you mean 11th hour. And I couldn't believe somebody wrote those words. Cars 3. When I watched this movie, I hated it with every fiber of my being. Looking back, it's probably not that bad, but it's definitely the worst Pixar movie. Yes, I know what I just said. This movie is unfunny, unmoving, cripplingly average fare from Pixar, with one of the most jaw-droppingly bad endings I've seen. I almost had my faith in Pixar killed because of this movie. I can't stand it. Dave Made a Maze. At this point, I was just looking for any movie from 2017 I might want to watch, because unfortunately, a lot of movies that I wanted to put on the list weren't from 2017. In fact, why don't we take a quick pause to remember all of the movies that aren't actually 2017 movies. What is this? What is that movie? Okay. Is that not going away? I can look it up. Okay, apparently this movie was made in 2004, but released in the United States in 2017? What? Anyway, this movie, Dave Made a Maze, it caught my eye because it looked really creative despite the fact it might be a little low budget. And it was exactly what I was hoping for. Right away, you jump right into the premise of a giant cardboard labyrinth, which is very fantastical. And this movie just had very imaginative visuals, a campy style, some great characters, genuine depth. The fate of some characters by the end of the movie I wasn't a huge fan of, but the movie handled what I would consider a bad decision in the best possible way they could. So I was just, all in all, very pleasantly surprised by this movie's existence. I'm very happy I watched it. Coco! I'm glad people seem to like it, but I could not get past how annoyed I was with the cliches in it. Having to win the big contest, sneaking into the big party, having the movie end with a big concert, the bad guy getting exposed because the camera broadcasts his evilness to a whole bunch of people. Didn't like any of that. I did like the twists, and I loved the ending. And the music, I didn't need any of it, but Remember Me was a great song. Ultimately, though, it all added up to feel like average fare from Pixar, which I feel Pixar usually does better than that. And I don't know, the nihilism of everyone dies didn't mix too well for me with the love your family message. Also, just pointing this out in case no one had this thought, Coco basically had the same ending as Boss Baby, so take that information as you will. Mother! People keep telling me that the ending is insane. I didn't think it was insane. I would agree that it was chaotic, but I think it could have been a lot weirder. The movie as a whole, I was barely engaged, but I just held on because it was odd enough for me to go, huh, alright. I wish things were even weirder, though, honestly. I have to say, though, Jennifer Lawrence gave a very underrated performance in this movie. I thought she pulled off a lot of very hard acting. Transformers: The Last Knight. I only saw this movie and the second one. I tried focusing, but the movie didn't want me to. Thor Ragnarok. I think the best part of this movie were the interactions between Thor and Loki and Hulk. And I think the ending was really interesting, but I didn't like Goldblum or Blanchett as much as everyone else did. And I'm a little sad at the changes that Thor went through at the end of the movie, but I have a feeling things are about to get a lot sadder than that. A Bad Mom's Christmas. Horrible. I didn't see the first movie, but this movie contained the hijinks of hacks. I hated every mom in this movie, and now I hate Christmas. The Florida Project. The characters in this felt really developed, and it made them really compelling. I couldn't stop watching them. It was fun, and I couldn't believe that this movie successfully made trash people fun to watch. It made trashy people beautiful, which is especially interesting because this is a movie that takes place in a really poor area near Walt Disney World. So it's already about trash existing within a beautiful world, and then they take the trash and they make it beautiful, and you just kind of appreciate the beauty of everything in the world. Like Willem Dafoe, and your diarrhea in the potty. Geostorm. I thought that this movie was gonna be about a geostorm. There are only 10 minutes of an actual geostorm, and then most of the movie was about being in space and stealing government secrets. Was it too much to expect that this movie would be about a fucking geostorm? I just wanted a geostorm! Battle of the Sexes. I knew nothing about this event that the movie was based on going in, but Emma Stone and Steve Carell showed impressive acting versatility in this, and it felt like a really satisfying movie for people that care about women's rights. And I guess a little bit about lesbians. Logan. When this movie ended, I was so satisfied that my impulse was to not move. The movie was so awesome that my body physically didn't want the experience of watching it to end. This was such a bold mix of superhero fantasy and gritty realism, and the violence was wonderfully no holds barred. Not only was the action gripping, but the characters were gripping too. Logan is a perfect rogue with a heart of gold, and you feel so much emotion from his anger. It's just a beautiful, incredible movie-going experience. The Case for Christ. I thought it was really interesting that scientific arguments were used to support things that were in the Bible. I almost found myself getting convinced, but I'm not there yet. Also, this movie portrayed atheists horribly. Baby Driver. I loved this movie the first time, and then I saw it a second time, and I liked it a lot less. And this happened with The World's End, which was also by Edgar Wright. I'm not sure what it is. I liked the direction that this movie went in, but I guess when I saw it the second time, the characters felt stale to me, especially Baby Driver, and the action didn't seem that interesting. I don't know, it just felt like there was a lot of stripped potential for entertainment value in this. Molly's Game. Jessica Chastain does great work, as always. She was great in the Madagascar movie. This movie was a good ski movie, but there wasn't anything too special about it. Murder on the Orient Express. I love mysteries, and I love ensemble pieces, and this movie offered it all. I'd never experienced this story before, so I was excited to. This is probably not the way I should have experienced it. The characters in the ensemble didn't do all that much, and the tension was really lacking. The twist was great, though. Probably one of the most memorable twists I've seen, and I can understand why the story has all the clout it does, but the twist does get dumber the more you think about it. Wonder Woman. Better than I thought it would be. The woman empowerment definitely helps bolster things, but it also stands on its own by being a great clash of two different worlds and two different sets of ideals. The ending was probably too dumb. The Disaster Artist. I didn't like this movie. I felt like the point of this movie was to make fun of The Room, but I have more fun doing that myself, and besides, this is the beginner's course on making fun of The Room. Honestly, there are many YouTube videos out there that do a much better and more entertaining job of it. I will say, though, James Franco's performance of Tommy Wiseau was really captivating, and probably the only reason I'd ever watch this movie again. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. The premise of 4 people being put into very different bodies from their own was very creative, and the movie had a lot of fun exploring all the possibilities that could come with a premise like that. Everything else in the movie sucked. The villain was terrible. Nick Jonas was terrible. But hey, you know, thank you for welcoming me to the jungle. That was very kind. Spider-Man Homecoming. I liked this movie all around. Great characters, great action, great comedy, great story. You can tell a lot of effort was put into this, and Tom Holland rocked it as Spider-Man. Now, Marvel had an interesting situation here since the movie-going public already knew a good chunk of things about Spider-Man and his origins. So, they had the opportunity to introduce Spider-Man in a different way than other superheroes. They didn't have to show his origins. And I think that Marvel very inventively took advantage of this opportunity because the way that they weaved him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe was brilliant to me. It was so interesting. Personally, I think Marvel rocked it in 2017. I think it was by far their best year. And in terms of this movie, the guy that directed it came from a sketch comedy background. He was doing YouTube sketches, and I'm still subscribed to his channel, so wow. American Assassin. This movie had a genuinely great opening that really put you in the mood for a solid revenge story. And then the movie just abandoned that and traded it in for a really boring non-revenge story, and I didn't care. It had a lead character that was a rookie that didn't play by the rules and was always right for some reason, which, okay. It wasn't even a dumb enough movie. The dumbest it got was there was a nuke at the end, and they stopped it by basically drowning it. The whole movie was a disappointment, but at least Michael Keaton looked like he was having fun. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. This movie went in unexpected directions that built up to something meaningful instead of just random. It had an incredible balance of great comedy with great drama. All of the acting was exceptional, and it had a really punchy premise with the 3 billboards, but it was a story that didn't really need the punchy premise. It rested on its twists and misdirection. Great movie. Logan Lucky. I like heist movies, and this was a good heist movie. I like that it portrayed the South as being smart and clever. I feel like you don't see that very often. I do think it had familiar plotting, but they embellished it with a fresh take on characters and a fresh direction. The Book of Henry. I heard that this was an awful movie, and that's totally true. It had bewilderingly dumb writing, and usually I like this, but it was just too frustrating and annoying in this movie. The moral was repulsive. Just a garbagey movie. The Big Sick. This movie felt new. Kumail and Ray were really funny, and the movie just had great humor and great heart. Kingsman: The Golden Circle. The first movie was pretty wacky. This movie definitely got things a little wackier, but I mostly liked it, except Elton John. It filled the void for wacky spy thrillers. Smurfs: The Lost Village. I guess there were creative creatures in it? The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This premise was so weird and gripping. There's just inherently a lot of drama in having to decide which one of your family members you want to kill. And the villain in this was especially intriguing in just how plain he was. I missed that this movie featured a curse, like a supernatural element. I just must not have been listening to that pivotal sentence, so the whole movie I'm wondering, how is this happening exactly? And then I looked it up and went, oh, that kind of changes the whole movie. But that's my bad. I don't think it was bad that it was in there. Maybe just a little odd, but you're able to accept it. And overall, I thought I would be bored with this movie, but I couldn't stop watching it. Lady Bird. I thought this was a fine romp with genuine humor, but I felt it was inferior in every way to last year's The Edge of 17, which I adored. I'm really confused by the hype. Is that good? Has nobody else seen The Edge of 17? It was great to see some truly scary imagery in this movie. The clown was a lot of fun, and I guess the kids were fun too. Too Funny to Fail. This was a documentary about the making of the Dana Carvey show, which I had never heard of before, and it played like an adaptation of an interesting Wikipedia article. It was at least inspiring to see famous people before they were famous and see how they got the success they got. I don't know, I guess I get inspired by seeing famous people knocked down to my level. The Meyerowitz Stories, new and selected. I love the writer-director Noah Baumbach who made this, but I wish I loved the movie more. The dialogue was great, as always, but I feel like I might need to watch it a second time. I just didn't connect with it as much as I wanted to. Blade Runner 2049. I'm fascinated when a sequel can come out years after the original movie and be good. This sequel not only expands on the original's ideas, but it adds all new things. And it works. Now, I'm not truly in love with either one of these movies. I think they're very thoughtful, but not as exciting as they probably could be. And it was a little sad seeing Harrison Ford as a damsel in distress in this movie when he did so many cool things in the original movie. But nonetheless, it was a very memorable movie. If for anything, it's creativity. Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales. The first movie was great. The two after that were good. The two after that weren't good. I will give props where props are due. I think that the action sequences in all of these movies, including this one, were particularly inventive. So, good job. Otherwise, it felt like everyone was sleepwalking through this 5th installment. It was not funny at all, and it was a really sad finale to the series, assuming it is the finale. I just want to pretend that the first movie is where things ended, so it doesn't feel as pathetic. There we go, I did it. I reviewed all 100 2017 movies that I saw. And now, let me tell you which 10 were the worst, really quick. Number 10, Transformers: The Last Night. Number 9, The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature. Number 8, Fun Mom Dinner. Number 7, #Reality High. Number 6, Undercover Grandpa. Number 5, Home Again. Number 4, Baywatch. Number 3, Snatched. Number 2, Bigger, Fatter, Liar. And number 1, The Book of Henry. And now let me tell you what my top 10 favorite movies were, really quickly. Number 10, The Boss Baby. Yes, I'm serious. Number 9, Phantom Thread. Number 8, Okja. Number 7, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Number 6, Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 5, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Number 4, The Shape of Water. Number 3, Get Out. Number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and number 1, Logan. Alright, glad I got all that clickbait top 10 stuff out of the way. Anyway, that's all from me. Now get the fuck out of my house!